Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by Real Good Foods. Real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Welcome to a bonus episode of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. As always, we aim to educate and inspire by sharing stories of connection. And this is a big story of connection. These are two huge groups that are now connected in a new way. JDRF and Beyond Type 1 have launched what they're calling an alliance to serve the Type 1 diabetes community. By now, you've probably read up on this and you've seen it on social media. Maybe you dug a little deeper into some articles. But as you know, I like to talk to people. I like to hear their voices. I like to try to ask my own questions and ask your questions of leaders when this kind of stuff happens. So I reached out to Aaron Kowalski, who is the president and CEO of JDRF, and I reached out to Thom Scher, who is the CEO of Beyond Type 1. As you can imagine, it was rather difficult to get their schedules to line up. Eventually, we did work it out. The problem is, and you'll hear this, is that the only time that worked was a time when I was on the road. And I mean on the road in the car. So while normally my guests can be remote, I mean, you've heard a lot of my guests on the phone. When I'm remote, when I'm in the car on the phone, it really changes the audio. It's different if I'm able to get to a hotel room or someplace with Wi-Fi and do it through my laptop. But for this one, I had to pull in my editor. Thank you, John Buchanan. He had to kind of run us all together, me and Tom and Aaron, all of us on the phone. Interestingly, Tom and Aaron sound okay. I sound terrible. So the next time, if I have to do something like this, I've got to figure out a better way, maybe plugging a mic into my phone or getting better headphones. I have no idea, but I don't sound like myself, I don't think. So I do apologize for the quality, but I do think it's good enough that you can hear the content most importantly, but it's not up to par, especially if this is the first episode you're listening to. This does not represent what we normally do for audio, so please go back and listen. But the important thing here is the information. So let's get to it. Here is my interview from the car on the way to the Friends for Life conference. Interestingly enough, when we do mention that, here's my call with Thom Scher and Aaron Kowalski.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for making some time for me to talk about this and to share some information with my listeners. I really appreciate it. Let's jump on in and get the questions going. Aaron, let me start with you. I guess the biggest question is, what does this mean in terms of, in practical terms? What are we going to notice here?
Well, I think this is just such an exciting opportunity to leverage two wonderful organizations' skills to do more together. And in practical terms, it means hopefully we get more people engaged with the mission. JDRF's mission is to cure type 1 diabetes and help people improve their lives until we get there. And Beyond Type 1 has been an amazing community. And Tom, I'm sure will speak to this, of community engagement, leaning on one another and empowering one another. So for me, it's about driving the mission of helping people with type 1 diabetes do better and driving towards a cure even faster.
I think, as Aaron said, this is really about A, eliminating some redundancies, and B, finding synergies where we can be more powerful together. So the alliance itself is structured in these sort of three primary pillars: these community programs, advocacy, and then education and communication. I think in community programs, this is really about ensuring that our respective programs have deeper participation, that we're making sure that people and families every day in their communities know what programs are available to them. It's going to mean far more energy and eyeballs, in effect, on advocacy measures where we're attacking problems head on together. And I think with communications and research, this is about us leveraging JDRF as the leading global research entity funding T1D research, paired with what is our ability to storytell about that research for our audience, which has tremendous digital reach.
I don't know if you can answer this, and Tom, I'll start with you. But why did this happen? What was the need to do this? Was something missing on either side? Can you talk a little bit about the story behind why here?
Sure. I think that both JDRF and Beyond Type 1 are strong and important in the space. I also think Aaron and I sat down and it was very clear that there were areas of overlap in the middle of the Venn diagram, sort of, where we realized that working together, and this sounds a little cheesy, but where it really would be 1 + 1 = 3, or I think you'll probably correct me and say it's 1 + 1 = 5. And the minute we identified that list of things, it just became very clear that we were stronger together on a handful of these initiatives. I also think, and this certainly isn't something that the organizations were trying to do, but inevitably, I think that we people in the community sometimes feel like they had to pick. And that's silly. We're all in this together, all fighting to improve the lives of people impacted by diabetes. And I think JDRF and Beyond Type 1 saw that and saw that we were able to really work together and build something robust and official that sort of allows both organizations now to go out and do these things together.
Yeah. And Erin, let me ask you to build on that by also asking, though, I guess part of my question is this a merger? I know it's an alliance, but is it a merger of any kind? Or talking about eliminating some redundancies? Can you speak to that?
We're going to stay independent organizations, but it is reducing redundancies and building on what one another do well. And I think it's from my perspective, when I took on the CEO role of JDRF, I really talked to the board about a couple of key things. One is, what is JDRF really good at? And I think we're really good at funding research. We fund more research than anybody but the U.S. government. We've been successful at advocacy, and our mission has really been improving lives and curing type 1 diabetes. Beyond Type 1 has been an incredible force in uniting our community. And that is something that JDRF, historically, we have a tremendous community, but we've been pouring our dollars more into research activities. So the question then became, how do we make sure that we're not overlapping and doing the same things? And then how do we amplify one another's voices? It's fine to have two different but aligned missions. And that's where I think the synergy and the 1 + 1 = 5 here. The other thing that's really interesting, and I think Thom and the team at Beyond Type 1 have done an amazing job at doing, is JDRF has been historically a parent-driven organization. Here I am as a person with Type 1. I have a brother who has Type 1. I've been really focused on, of course, the parents are the lifeblood of kind of rallying the troops, but we need Type 1 people to kick in more. Beyond Type 1 has engaged with the adult community, certainly better than we have. All aligning against one another's missions will help us do better. And we can do that independently, but in an alliance. And I think that's where we're headed right now.
I asked this question because I'm talking to you both, and behind the scenes real quick, you have no idea what it took to get these two guys together in a short period of time. And for me, when I'm on the road, I am literally sitting outside the Friends for Life conference in Falls Church, Virginia. So I ask this question because that's on my mind. Erin, if JDRF is partnering with Beyond Type 1, or there's an alliance here, are there other alliances that you might be considering? And Thom, feel free to jump in here too. I mean, the Children with Diabetes Friends for Life is an obvious one that comes to mind. Are there, I don't know if you can share, are there more conversations going on?
Sure. So I'll start, and Thom can jump in too, of course. My goal is to be aligned with everybody who's pushing in support of the mission. Jeff and Friends for Life, we've worked together for a number of years supporting the events and his community. We have a partnership with Christina Roth and the College Diabetes Network. They're doing a tremendous job with a community of people who often really struggle, young adults with type 1 diabetes and kids at college. So I keep saying within JDRF, how do we make sure we're the best partner? And how do we make sure that we're supporting people who are pushing with aligned missions? And, to me, the door is wide open to be helpful to folks who are helping people with diabetes.
And I'll add to that. I think on our end, we really believe in collaboration, and I think we have a handful of meaningful collaboration. We also work with Tina Roth at College Diabetes Network, and they're a core partner on safe sittings, for example. Diabetes Sisters and Anna Norton just took over all of our Instagram feeds for a week as we try to raise awareness of those programs. We really believe in that kind of collaboration. At the same time, the alliance with JDRF, I think, is bigger than some of those kinds of collaborations. And that's partially due to the quantity of things where there was alignment and we believe there was value. So rather than one-off partnerships, which JDRF and Beyond Type 1 has been doing for a meaningful amount of time, we wanted something that felt a little bit more umbrella where both organizations could look holistically at all of the ways we could work together.
I brought these questions to my listeners and asked them what they would like me to ask you both about. And while many of the questions were about the Alliance, most of the questions had to do with insulin affordability and access. And so while I know that's not exactly what we're here to talk about, I would be remiss if I didn't ask a little bit about that, because if this is such a really powerful alliance, it does add to the voices. I know both organizations are active. So let me just ask you to reiterate, and Aaron, if you wouldn't mind starting, what is the latest from JDRF in terms of pushing for insulin affordability?
Yeah, this is one of our top advocacy issues that we're dealing with now. And I've said this multiple times. I've testified on the Hill 3 times on this topic. Mm-hmm. No one should suffer or die for lack of insulin. And what we have in the United States is a shameful situation. JDRF is fully committed that nobody should have to choose between rent or a car payment or insulin. So we've been working on a number of fronts with the payer community, with Congress, looking at people who are under or uninsured, and looking at every remedy possible. I can tell you that working with Beyond Type 1, I think we're going to be able to amplify this message multiple fold. And to me, it's of course about amplifying the message, but it's about driving towards solutions. I mean, we have an untenable situation in the United States right now that's fully unacceptable. So I think by getting more people involved, we hopefully will drive to solutions sooner.
And I'll build off of that. I think we certainly are looking forward to working with JDRF to be more impactful in this arena, bringing more patient voices into the conversation, certainly at a federal level. I think our perspective at Beyond Type 1 on this is that we need to look for pragmatic solutions. And on top of those pragmatic solutions, we need to be ensuring that we are providing resources every day to people who are in need of insulin. And so some of those pragmatic solutions take the form of actual policy matters, be it first dollar coverage or Kevin's laws. Some of the resource components have to do with ensuring that, for example, people who are uninsured know what assistance, they know how to get to them. They know that with them, they will have coverage. There are robust programs in particular for that population. It's that the barriers to entry are too high. So we're really committed to building out our advocacy arm of Beyond Type 1 over the course of the next year. This alliance was a big part of that because we now get to work with JDRF, a leading organization on that front, leveraging their expertise and bringing it into our community. And that's a stepping stone for us to take more meaningful steps.
I have just a curious question. Do you guys, you knew each other? I mean, it's such a small community. Are you friends? Did you know each other before you started talking about this kind of stuff? I mean, just more in passing, or was this the kind of thing you had coffee and said, hey, we should work together more?
I consider Aaron a friend. And a colleague, and I love working with him. I don't think Aaron and I knew each other all that well when we each respectively took over as CEOs, though I certainly knew of Aaron and respected Aaron. I think Aaron and I, over a series of conversations in person and by phone, have definitely gotten closer, and I feel really lucky to call Aaron a friend now. I think that certainly informed some of the creation of the alliance. It was Aaron and I being able to really sit down and talk at a high level, everything on the table, how can we work together? And that came from a place, at least on my end, of real trust in Aaron's vision and a belief that him and I were going to be able to work together, and so would our teams. So, no, we were not necessarily friends before this, but I certainly consider us friends today.
Yeah, it's really funny that when we announced the alliance, Thom tweeted out a picture that we took together that goes back maybe a year or so ago, and he said something to the effect of, this has aged well. And Thom came down to the office in New York City, the JDRF office, and we sat down and talked, and really it was quite clear that we were so aligned in where we were trying to take both of these organizations. And so we hadn't met before that. And here we are, we took this selfie, and now today in October 2019, I think Thom is a great diabetes friend and friend just overall. I always love seeing, we love seeing one another. I mean, it's funny, diabetes is one of these places, I always call it the club that we want no more members of, but you find amazing people who are in this club, unfortunately. And Thom is just one of those amazing people who's leaned in. He's just such a joy to work with. And we are going to do amazing things together. So I'm just so fortunate now that we have this bond.
I look forward to seeing what you all accomplish together. But I have one more question. This also came up from my listeners. I think they might have been joking, but I am not. We have Rufus the bear. We have Jerry the bear. We have two amazing bears. I'm worried about one of them. Are we okay? Aaron, let me start with you on that.
This is one of those honest discussions that Thom and I had. I said, guys, we have two bears here. Thom, we have two bears here. What are we going to do? And I think it's just emblematic of overlap. And we are going to, I hate to say it, one of the bears, maybe it'll become a hybrid bear. But I think we'll have one path forward because we want dollars to go to mission. And we don't need to have two kits or two bears or two things. And I look forward to handing off a number of things to Beyond Type 1 and I think vice versa. So I expect that the future holds one bear.
Very. Thom, we've got
big words from Aaron. Big words about murdering Jerry over here. I'm kidding. Look,
of course.
We have a fabulous ecosystem of a lion, a turtle, two bears, a snail. There's a lot of animals running around in the diabetes landscape these days. I think that is emblematic of there being redundancies. On our end, Rufus is this incredible bear, and it serves such an important role at the point of diagnosis in particular. And Jerry actually has historically served a different purpose, though he's occasionally marketed as that. He's used in clinical settings to, in particular, teach kids or loved ones about what dosing looks like. And we've had really strong results with that in a handful of these clinical pilots. I think there's an opportunity to find synergy where we take things like the storybook structure of Jerry and potentially bring Rufus into that and really be able to meaningfully eliminate somewhat of a redundancy here. We love Rufus. We love Jerry. We love all of the animals. That doesn't mean that we love all of the animals forever.
Aaron, did you have something you were chiming in on there with I missed?
I was just going to say exactly. I think it's all about making sure that the vehicles to get the word out, whether it's Rufus, Jerry, or other tools, aren't overlapping. It's as simple as that. And driving as many of our resources into the mission-related activities as possible.
Well, I really appreciate you both jumping on. Again, I know it's difficult and everybody is busy, but for me, it was important to hear your voices, frankly, and get some questions answered that I know you've already answered, perhaps in print. But I like talking to you both because you do answer these questions. You're very open about what's going on. And it's really important, as you know, to the community, because now, people get worried and people are concerned. And I think you can put some of those fears to rest. So I do appreciate you both taking the time to do this. Aaron and Thom, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. You have such a great show and so many awesome listeners, and it's just a real honor to be on here with Thom. Thanks for having us.
I echo that. Thank you so much, Stacey. We really appreciate getting to come on today.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
So those of you who asked about Jerry the Bear and Rufus, you thought you were kidding. But they have thought this through quite a bit. And I think we're going to hear more about, I don't want to talk about redundancy and mergers because that makes it sound so corporate and clinical. But I do think there's some overlap here that they would like to streamline. So we will definitely be hearing more of that in the weeks, months, years to come. And you see what I mean about the audio? Oh, if you listen for a long time, you know that nothing makes me crazier than when the audio is not up to par. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate you staying with it. I hope you learned something here. If you have more questions, send them my way. I know we're going to be doing follow-up as we learn more about this alliance between Beyond Type 1 and JDRF. I work with both groups. In the interest of transparency. If you follow me on social media and you've listened to the show, you know that over the years I have fundraised for both groups, and I have a very good working relationship with both of them. But doesn't mean we can't ask questions. Doesn't mean we have to support every single move, and they don't expect that anyway. So let me know what you think. We will be watching this a lot more. Back next week with our regularly scheduled podcasts, which come out on every Tuesday. If you are new, please continue to tune in. Join the Facebook group, Diabetes Connections, the group, or sign up for the newsletter. All of that information is in the show notes, and you can learn more at diabetes-connections.com. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.